Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Carmen Rempel. I serve in the role of CEO at Habitat for Humanity Victoria. I'm here with my team from Family Services and volunteerism here at Habitat, and we are going to walk you through our program. Today, we're going to talk about who Habitat for Humanity is, how our homeownership program works, who qualifies, how our mortgage model works, volunteer expectations for all of our families. We're going to go through the process, and then we're going to answer some live questions at the end. So thanks for tuning in. I hope this time is valuable for you. We have a shared vision as Habitat. We have a vision where there's a world where everyone has a safe and decent place to live. What that looks like varies country to country, community to community. Here in Victoria, what we do is that we bring people together to build homes, communities, and hope. So Habitat for Humanity is an international nonprofit organization with over 7.1 million people having improved housing through our work in over 70 different countries. We're a proud part of the Habitat brand. And here in Victoria, we are part of the Habitat Canada Federation, and we are our own autonomous charity located here in the Capital Regional District, serving that area. We do this through two different programs. We have our affordable home ownership program, which is what you're going to be hearing about tonight. And then we also have our critical repairs program, which is taking affordable housing stock in our communities that is maybe unsafe or is an undecent place for people to be living. And we come with volunteers and a little bit of money, and we restore those homes to their former glory, making them safe for people to live in. So how our program works here, Habitat for Humanity, we are a builder, a developer, and the real magic in our program lies in the fact that we are in fact a lender for our projects. This allows us to provide affordable home ownership opportunities here in the CRD. In order to do this, our work begins by securing land. Land can often be donated from municipalities, from provincial or private sources. We've been really blessed by having families who have actually left a legacy in their will or decided as a family that they were going to donate a portion of land to Habitat for a project. And so many of our projects have been built on land that has been donated, and that helps us make the projects affordable. So after we obtain that affordable land, then we go ahead and look at the needs of the surrounding community. We design and build a project, and then we sell them on to families. Our biggest challenge is finding land that is affordable because, of course, in our region, land is not cheap. Well, we are really excited to announce that we have found a piece of land here in the city of Langford. This is an exciting project for us and our team because Habitat Victoria has been operating our social enterprise, one of our restores in Langford, for many, many years. And so it feels good to be building in our own backyard. We have a piece of land, West Hills of Langford on Irwin Road near the Geordie Land Bike Park. We also own a piece of property in Saanich, which we are looking at developing after phase 1 of Irwin. So Irwin Road is going to be 26 units total. Phase 1, we're going to be starting by building 16 units, and then we'll hop over to Saanich, build 13 units of housing over there, and then pop back over and finish phase 2 of Irwin Road with an additional 10 units. So that's what we've got ahead of us. We rely on community partnerships, donations, and tight relationships with our different government partners in order to make these projects go. And so with that as an overview of who we are and what we do, I'm going to hand it over to Tiffany, who is our Director of Family Services. She would be the one that, should you apply for our program, would be walking you through the application process.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tiffany Gates. I'm the HR and Family Services Director for Habitat Victoria and have been with the organization for the last 7 years, having the privilege of helping over a dozen families into homeownership, which is very exciting for me, and hoping that we can add 16 more families in this Langford project and even more as we move along. This process begins with something you may have already done or are about to do, which is complete an expression of interest. An expression of interest is available on our website, and this allows us to take a first glance at what your family is comprised of, size-wise, income-wise, debt-wise, and allows us to look at our core criteria and figure out where your family might land. It could be that you're going to land right in the perfect, let's hand you the next step, which is the application, or it could be that we've got some questions, we need to sort of figure some more things out, or it could be that your family lands in the not yet pile, where we're going to provide you with some feedback, and if you go away and choose to work on that, you might come back and apply again down the road. Who can apply? So part of our program requirements include the requirements that families need to be Canadian citizens or permanent residents. They need to have lived in the CRD, which is Mill Bay South and the Gulf Islands, for 2 years or more. And individuals who have at least one child, 12 or under, or a 16 or under child who has a life-altering disability, meaning that they will be living with your family indefinitely. We have a new program that's starting this year, and it's called Homestart. Homestart is a program that provides an affordable pathway to homeownership for working single individuals and couples seeking a one-bedroom house. Eligible households include those who could be married or common law without dependent children. And we're very excited for this to kick off and explore what this might look like. In the first phase of Irwin, we will have one bedroom unit available for families to consider. There's 3 core criteria that families need to fit into for part of our program, and the first is living in need. One or more of the following must apply. You spend more than 30% of your income on rent. Any health conditions are made worse by living in your current housing. Your home is overcrowded for the number of people. Your home requires major repairs. Your home or neighborhood is not safe, and you do not currently own home or property. Next is the ability to pay. Families must have a stable source of income, and that is working income. That falls within the range for the size of home. Our one-bedroom units with the Homestart program, the income range is $55,000 to $90,560, and that is gross income for either yourself as applying as an individual or combined applying as a couple. For our 2-bedroom plus, homes are looking at starting with the $60,000 range and to a maximum of $146,270, and the 4-bedroom unit starting at a base of $65,000. You need to provide us with proof of 2 years of stable income. Gross household income needs to fall within the range I've just mentioned. The additional piece is low manageable debt that you're currently servicing. Next, what size of family fits into these types of homes? As I've mentioned, the Homestart 1-bedroom is intended for a single person or a couple. The 2-bedroom could be 1 child or 2 children of the same gender. The 3-bedroom can be anywhere from 2 to 4 children, and a 4-bedroom can be anywhere from 3 to 6 children. Homes are allocated based on household size and family composition to ensure we're making the best use of our limited housing inventory and serving as many families as possible. As part of this approach, we do not intentionally overhouse applicants by assigning larger homes than their household requires. What does a typical Habitat home look like? We don't have a show home for you to pop over and visit. However, this specific build for Irwin is looking at 16 stacked townhouses. A typical Habitat home has the following: an open main floor living, enough bedrooms for the family, 1 to 1.5 bathrooms, stall parking without garages, shared green space, shared bicycle parking, and some units will be accessible based on family needs. How our programs work. So Habitat families purchase their affordable home at a predetermined value. They're homeowners, not tenants, not renters. Families are responsible for the care, maintenance, and expenses associated with homeownership. Mortgage payments are structured to remain affordable and are reviewed annually based on the household income. One of our other core criteria is the ability to pay and service debt. What we need to see. We need to see long-term debt less than 40% of your gross income, which is those types of debt, which is car loans, student loans, whereas short-term debt, such as credit cards or lines of credit, need to be at least 5% of your gross income. Your credit score needs to be 650 or higher. You need to qualify for a mortgage with our retail lender, our partner, and payments are manageable in the debt world for you and your family as everything comes together as a package. If you're wondering or overwhelmed by this, don't worry. Carmen will be coming up soon to talk more about this. Also, please know that many families thought they wouldn't qualify. Happy though that they did. So as they go through the process, it could be that there's families who spent a little bit of time talking things through with us, finding out that they're in that not yet category. They've then taken the information advice, gone back. Perhaps they've talked to their banker or a lender. Perhaps they've talked to someone who can help them with their budgeting process. They've then worked hard at cutting costs and making sure that they're servicing their debt. They've turned things around. They've come back to us, reapplied, And I'm happy to say we've got multiple families that were in those situations that are now homeowners. So we partner with families to build the home using donated funds, materials, and labor. Another part of our core criteria is families having the requirement to partner with us. There needs to be a willingness there, willing to be an ambassador by participating in public events, by being photographed and speaking to the press. Don't worry though, we won't make you a celebrity unless you want to be. We're also expecting families to be a good neighbor. Habitat communities are diverse and welcoming. We ask families to embrace living alongside people from many different backgrounds with kindness, respect, and community spirit. Think borrow a cup of sugar neighbor, not call a bylaw over a dandelion. We want families to embrace homeownership responsibilities. Owning a home also means taking care of it, including taxes, utilities, insurance, and maintenance. Yes, eventually you'll become that person who gets excited about a new hot water tank. Habitat homeownership is about more than receiving keys. It's about becoming part of a community and taking pride in your home and your neighbors. Next, each family must complete the 500 volunteer service hours within 2 years before receiving title to their home. And my colleague Jamie is going to come here and chat with you a little bit more about that. Jamie?
Hi, this is Jamie, volunteer and event manager. As Tiffany said, part of the partnership, families complete 500 volunteer hours prior to executing the purchase of their home. This is equal to about 6 hours per week over 2 years, but of course you can go faster in certain circumstances. When you become a partner family, we will meet and discuss opportunities to come up with a plan for your volunteer hours that suit your skills, schedule, and the organization's needs. Examples of this are working in our restores, showing up at our gingerbread showcase to act as an ambassador, fundraising or publicity events, on your own build site, other build sites, or our critical repairs program. Our intention is to create meaningful experiences for our family volunteers. This is about building community, connecting the families together, and these are going to be your future neighbors, so it's fun to work together and volunteer. As an example, our Bakerview families who volunteered side by side during their builds and got to know each other are now dear friends and neighbors, and I've heard some of them get together for a Legion night once in a while. One of our family members who is a roofer volunteered at Critical Repairs recently doing a roof for us. What started as a family partner hours became volunteer service that is ingrained in him. It was a full circle moment. Friends and family can support you by volunteering too, up to 100 hours to help couples and up to 250 hours to help a single parent household. They can get their hours in many of the same ways as families, at our restores, our gingerbread showcase, fundraising and publicity events, or on our build sites. We've been known to create a special fun after work or weekend session for a large group of volunteers to come together, and that's always been a great time. From our family hours a few years ago, we still have volunteers in our restores. Some of them loved it enough to keep coming back and continue supporting Habitat and our restores. Additionally, you may know that we need to raise funds from the private and public sector, foundations, individual donations, and other sources. Family volunteers can help with this. We host a variety of different events and programs. Families can participate in these by helping get the word out, acting as ambassadors, manning our tenter tables, connecting with the community, and more. And speaking of fundraising and finances, we're going to pass this off to Carmen to talk more about that.
So what you need to know is that purchasing a Habitat home is different from purchasing a home on the open market or traditional home ownership as we think of it. So we're going to take some time to talk about how our model works and how it's different than purchasing a regular home. This is an introduction. Please know if you become a future Habitat homeowner, we will cover and go over what I'm sharing with you now multiple times. It can be complex to understand at first. So be patient and don't worry, we will walk you through this step by step. So as previously mentioned, the Habitat for Humanity is not only a builder and developer, but we also play a role in the lending for the purchase of the home. It's in fact our lending terms, not the purchase price of the home, that makes home ownership affordable. There are two ways in which we make purchasing a Habitat home affordable. First is that we don't require a down payment to purchase the home. We know the down payment is a huge impediment to making the move into home ownership. However, if you do have assets to make a down payment, we are required to use it to pay for part of the purchase of the home. The second is that we're able to keep housing costs, including mortgage, strata, and property tax, at 30% of the household gross income. For example, if the annual income of the adults in a home is $75,000, housing costs will be kept at or below 30% of that $75,000, which works out to $22,500 in housing costs per year. This would make a monthly payment of $1,875 monthly. Now, the reason we can do this is because, like regular housing purchase, when you buy a Habitat home, you will pay for this by getting a mortgage with our partner bank, which we currently work with Van City, for what you can afford to, up to 65% of the purchase price of the home. We call this the first position mortgage. Now, with our partner under a program, you'll get a 5-year fixed term mortgage with a 25-year amortization at market interest rates. That's pretty standard. Now, the remainder of the purchase price is funded by Habitat through a second position mortgage. Now, this Habitat mortgage is at 0% interest. So as the lender of the second position mortgage, we as Habitat are able to adjust the payments on the Habitat portion of the mortgage so we can ensure we're keeping your housing costs at 30% of the homeowner's income. So like I mentioned at the beginning, purchasing a Habitat home is different from purchasing a home on the open market. I'm going to take some time to talk about those differences. When we look at market or traditional home ownership versus Habitat home ownership, there's a number of key differences to be aware of. First, let's start with down payments. When you purchase a home on the open market, you're required a minimum 5% down payment. With the Habitat program, there's no down payment required if you don't have the assets to contribute. For market ownership, if you have less than a 25% down payment, CMHC fees are added to your mortgage amounts. Under our program, there are no CMHC fees. Under market home ownership, your monthly mortgage payments are set with each renewal. The amount doesn't change for each term after the renewal, so usually every 5 years. Under our program, we look at the income of all the adults in your house annually, and we call this income verification, and we adjust your payments so housing payments are at that 30% of income of all the adults in your home. Typically, when you buy a home on the open market, you have one lender, a bank, and one mortgage payment. In our program, as I mentioned before, homeowners have a mortgage with Van City, that first position mortgage with a retail lender, and a second mortgage with Habitat for Humanity that has 0% interest, and that is elastic in its payment amounts. So the payments on your Habitat mortgage can be adjusted when your household income is reviewed each year, either going up or going down. When you buy a home on the open market as a homeowner, you're subject to the market appreciation, that increase of the value, and also the depreciation, that decrease in those homes' fair market value. So with our program, you don't have that risk. We have limited the appreciation, that increase of value of the home, to 2% per year. So how do we do this? Well, we work with the municipalities. We register a housing agreement on title of the home. We register a right of first refusal and an option to purchase on each home that determines what the price of that home will be at any given time. And it also ensures that Habitat is able to buy back the home when a homeowner is ready to move on so that we can serve another family. This is something that will be explained to you again. It's unique to our program and really important to know. So in the open market, when you're ready to sell your home, you reach out to a realtor, you're subject to realtor fees, etc. When selling a Habitat home, we are going to purchase that unit back at a predetermined price, and Habitat charges a small admin fee of $2,500 to process the sale. Okay, so that gives you some specifics about how our homeownership model works. Now let's walk through an example. So let's look at this family. So Kelly's a paramedic earning $65,000 a year. Chris is a casual administrator making $15,000 a year. They have 3 kids, some twin boys and a daughter, and they're looking at purchasing a $500,000 Habitat home. Using the household income of $80,000 to purchase a $500,000 home, we have a chart comparing what it means if you've purchased the home in the open market or if it's been purchased through Habitat. In this table, in the blue, you'll see what it would look like if this household were to purchase a home at the price in the open market. You can see that they would need $25,000 of a down payment at a minimum, and that Kelly and Chris would need to qualify for a mortgage of $475,000. So when you look at their total housing costs on a household income of $80,000, they'd be paying about $3,216, about 48% of their household's income on housing costs. That is well above the 30%, which is what is used to define affordable housing. It's also highly unlikely a household with this income Kelly and Chris have would actually qualify for that mortgage at all. So the green portion of the table represents the housing cost should Kelly and Chris become Habitat homeowners. For purposes of this example, we've assumed they've qualified with Vancity for a $200,000 mortgage, and they don't have assets to contribute to a down payment, which leaves them with a $300,000 mortgage with Habitat. Now, the first column shows the Habitat mortgage, monthly strata, property taxes. The second column shows the mortgage payments that they would have with Vancity on their retail mortgage or first position mortgage. And the column furthest on the right shows the total housing payments. As their household income is $80,000, their total housing cost would be 30% of their income, which works out to $2,000 a month. So when you compare these two side by side, you see that the monthly housing costs under our program are $1,216 less per month than the total interest paid over a 25-year period. Which just means that the length of time it would take to pay out the full mortgages Chris and Kelly would have with the bank. The total interest paid would be $204,000 less with the Habitat home than with the open market purchase. As we walk through how the program works, the final question is, what happens when a family is ready to move on? When a Habitat homeowner is ready to move on, they sell their home back to Habitat for Humanity, and they'll receive the total of their principal payments on both mortgages. And if they've been in the house more than 2 years, they'll receive the 2% appreciation on the portion of the home they financed with Vancity Mortgage and their down payment if one was made. Again, using the example of Kelly and Chris, if they decided after 5 years, then they would have the following equity on the sale of their home. First, they would get back the amount that they'd paid down their Habitat mortgage. Over 5 years, a month payment of $286 would be about $17,000. On their retail mortgage with Vancity, they would have paid down an estimated $22,500-ish dollars, and then they would also get the 2% appreciation on the portion of the purchased price they financed with their Vancity mortgage of $21,000. So Habitat would charge an administrative fee of $2,500. For simplicity's sake, we've assumed that the sale, there are no fees associated with the Vancity mortgage, but it's important to note that Kelly and Chris may have some fees associated if they break their loan. So after 5 years, Kelly and Chris would walk away with an estimated $58,276. And that's their nest egg that they can go and take. And if they wish, they can purchase a home in the open market. Now I'll pass it back to Tiffany to talk more about being a Habitat partner.
So let's talk a little bit about our partnership expectations. As Carmen's mentioned, the mortgage that we have is a bit different. So unlike the bank where you renew your mortgage every 5 years or so, we meet annually to look at your income and adjust your mortgage payments. We are in your life way more than a usual bank. This is an ongoing partnership. This is something that you'll want to consider when you're thinking about applying for our program. But it's also important to know that we support you along the way. The intention of this is to ensure that you are successful and to ensure that we're supporting your family in the right way. It's also important to know that open and timely communication is an expectation. The other expectations we have is that you keep your home and the common property in good repair. Your Habitat home must be your primary residence. Requirements to be a good neighbor and an active participant in your strata, and to participate with our public events that we call on you for help. Thinking of applying? We hope so. So if you have not yet completed your expression of interest, please head to our website, habitatvictoria.com/homeownership, to find that expression of interest and take a look at our policies we have listed there for you. As well, keep in mind that we will not be advancing any families to the next phase, which is our application phase, until we receive our development permit from the City of Langford, which we anticipate to happen very soon. When your family is being considered for a Habitat Victoria home, you'll be required to provide a complete application form, references, employment history, and detailed financial documents. You'll undergo a background and credit check. You'll be open to meeting with the Family Selection Committee in your home so we can have an opportunity to ask you more questions and for you to ask us questions at the same time. Please note, from the time you apply to being approved for a home, it may take up to 4 months or potentially longer, depending on when we receive our development permits from municipalities. I'm going to pass this back to Carmen. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for listening to our presentation. I hope that it was really informative for you. We're going to go into some question and answers.
The answer is yes. So you typically the strata is created. So all these units are stratified, and there's typically a rule that puts in place as far as how many dogs, what size, all that kind of stuff. But typically the families that we've had, we've seen birds go in, we've seen cats, we've seen small dogs, hamsters. Once you've been accepted to our program and you've sat down with Carmen and myself and signed a letter of intent, which means that we've accepted you fully into the program, that's when you will be introduced to Jamie again and be able to start your volunteer hours. Volunteer hours can't start until you've been accepted into our program. No, you're able to stay in the home, you've purchased the home. However, on the flip side, if your children leave and now you're overhoused in that way and you're willing to sell the house back to us, that's fantastic because we get to serve another family. It's a bit of a win for us. And also you can take your equity and go into the open market, hopefully. So your water bill is associated, is paid by your strata. At least that's the way that it is right now with the Bakerview units and the two stratified units we have in Saanich. And so your strata council, being a part of a Habitat homeowner, requires to be part of the strata. You guys would adjust your strata payment. That's why we have that annual review. So if your strata payments need to go up to pay bills for the unit, then your payment is adjusted based on that. Sometimes it's personalized per unit. It just depends on how the build is constructed.
Yeah, the answer is yes, please. Right now, between our two restores, there's 80 working volunteers. So again, our website, volunteer page, tons of information.
If you pass away, the home goes to your estate. It has to be sold back to Habitat. It doesn't get inherited by your child. That's one of the unique things too about our program. The full equity from that home would go, that's a part of your estate, it would go to the child.
No, when looking to purchase the home, if you have assets, what we're required to look at based on the CRA's requirements would be if you had RRSPs, if you had savings. No, we don't take RESPs into consideration. However, if you have a child who's 24 years of age, if they're attending post-secondary, we wouldn't take any income from them. But if your child becomes an adult and chooses to live with you, when we do that annual review, 30% of their gross household income comes in towards the mortgage payment as well. And so that's a little bit different and does surprise some families, and we'd have to remind them all the time. So if your child's in post-secondary attending full-time studies, they can keep their part-time income they've got going on until they're 24. If you have a child with extra support needs who's going to live with you forevermore, when they turn 19 too, they turn into that more of an adult range and have an income as well that comes in. 30% of that goes towards the housing cost as well, to the total. We've had families that have gone through divorce that have applied. They may have owned before. They just can't currently own. We don't actually have the opportunity to move within units in our program. So you would come in the Home Start program and get that lift into the market, hopefully have enough to then launch you and your family as you expand into the regular mortgage market. So for families that there may be a divorce and there's a parent applying that has a split custody, there does need to be a notarized letter stating what the shared custody is, and we do require 50-50. Applying family could have more custody. That's fine as well. It's just that you can't have the 40 and below to qualify with your family. There's no crystal ball component of that. When we do have a buyback, we usually do announce it. So once you're in the home, you've purchased it, if the dynamic changes for you in the sense that you get married and your income increases, or maybe you get your dream job and again, your income increases, we just capture that in the payment change. Similarly, on the flip side of that, though, take a look at the temporary decrease. So there's a certain threshold we can't go below. Once we have your base mortgage payment from Van City and your strata, and you can't go below those pieces. We can adjust the Habitat mortgage a little bit, but we're really stuck with those hard costs. If there is a temporary situation like a mat leave, we'd work with you on lowering the payment if we can.